everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you my February marked as to read video. So, my marked as to read videos, the series of videos where I talk about all of the books over the past month that I was inspired to mark as to read on Goodreads. It's not a TBR, it's not an anticipated releases, because some of them, although a lot I will say in this video are, I think, 2020 releases. But for the most part, it's just books that I have heard about in any capacity from any time period that I want to eventually read, and so I've marked as to read. I'm going to talk about what the books are, what they're about, and where I heard about them. So let's jump straight in, because I marked 16 books as to read in February. So the very first book that I marked as to read was Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. I heard about this one from a Goodreads blog post that was about the upcoming novels for Black History Month. And so this is a Gothic mystery suspense set at an elite university. I don't really even know too much more about it apart from that, but that's ticking a lot of my boxes. Next was from another Goodreads blog post, and that was a Goodreads blog post, the ones they do where they're just highlighting books that are hitting shelves over the coming week. And on that one, there was a book called The Boatman's Daughter by Andy Davidson. This is a supernatural horror thriller that involves a mad preacher, witches, and a spooky bayou setting. Color me intrigued. Next is a book I originally heard about. I've heard a couple people talk about it since, but the first person I heard talking about it was Russell from over at Ink and Paper blog. And the book is I Know You Know Who I Am by Peter Kispert. And this is a short story collection, an LGBT short story collection. And I believe it's got a lot to do with the lies that queer people sometimes tell or feel they have to tell in order to hide their identities. And so I was just very intrigued, and Russell made it sound incredibly interesting. And so I marked that one as to read. Next, I marked as to read. This is a book that I have heard about and have been interested in for ages, and only came across it and realized that I hadn't marked it as to read. And I realized it's because I've been getting the cover confused with another book. And so the book is The Grace Year by Kim Liggett. And so I have just in my head thought I'd already marked this as to read, because I always get the cover of this book mixed up with I'll put the picture here, the cover of, I think it's Eggshell Skull, which is another book I'm interested in. I've previously marked as to read, but for some reason, I just already thought I'd marked it as to read, and I was just confusing it with another book. So this is a YA dystopic feminist story, I believe. And it's about a world where when women they turn 18 or 16 or some age, they enter their grace year, which is a period where they become very dangerous. I don't really understand what that all involves. They're basically sent away for a year, into the wilderness to just survive for a year on their own until they've been through the grace year. I don't know, that sounds very intriguing. I've been intrigued by that plot for a long time. Next we have a book that I was actually recommended by Michelle, from Michelle Lexi, who I recently did a buddy read with. And she was talking to me about a book, her favorite nonfiction book that she's read, which is called One Child, The Story of China's Most Radical Experiment by Mei Fong. So this is nonfiction dealing with, obviously, the one-child policy in China and the ramifications of that moving forward, about how they now have a very aged, very male-dominated population, because obviously when you're only allowed to have one child, I understand that a lot of people gave away or in some circumstances killed female children in order to have a male heir to carry on the family line, because they were only allowed one child. And like I say, as that policy is now no longer in place all these years later, and all these families have only had one child, a lot of the population is, I said, aged, and there's obviously a lot more men than women. So just looking all at that type of thing, it just sounds incredibly fascinating. Next was one that there was a Goodreads blog post about the most popular audiobooks. And again, this is a book that I have been interested in for a really long time and just didn't realize that I'd never marked it as to read, and that is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. I've heard so many people talk about this, and I've been interested in it for ages. Trevor Noah is, of course, a comedian, television presenter, originally from South Africa, and he is biracial. I believe he came from a black mother and a white father, and he was born in South Africa during apartheid, when obviously it was incredibly illegal for him to even exist. So always been incredibly interested in that book. Next, we have one that I originally heard about, well, I heard about on Simon's channel from Savage Reads, and that is The Foundling by Stacey Halls. And it's funny because I think I very recently had another book by Stacey Halls on my TBR. The synopsis of her books just ring a lot of, it just hit a lot of my buttons. And so this one is historical fiction set in London in 1754. And it's about a woman who, for whatever reason, I think she's got a daughter. I'm not sure how old the daughter is, but she ends up leaving her in like an orphanage or in some kind of like care system. And I think it's about 6 years later, and when she returns to collect the daughter, she finds that the daughter has already been collected by her. I don't really know what that means, but I'm intrigued. Now here we get to a huge amount of books. I think the next like 7 or 8 books all came from the same place, and that is I stumbled across, now on like Goodreads, as you will have noticed, I get a lot of my book recommendations from the Goodreads blog posts that they do, but Goodreads also has like their lists function of like people who create lists and all of that type of thing. I don't even know how I came across it, but I came across a list somehow that was of the 2020 releases of Gothic fiction. Gothic fiction is one of my favorite genres. Gothic is one of my massive buzzwords. And so I marked, like I said, 7 or 8 books from that list as to read. So let's talk about what they are. So the first one was Blood Countess by Lana Popovic. I believe this one is actually YA. And it's about it's set in 16th century Hungary, and it's about I think a poor person who's like a servant who works her way up to become a chambermaid to the Countess. But the Countess is like this dangerous, dark, very mysterious figure who, I don't really know too much about it apart from that, but she becomes enraptured with the Countess and all of the dark happenings going on with that. Very intrigued. Next we have Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is set in 1950s Mexico, and it is about a isolated mansion and the socialite drawn to the secrets of this mansion. Basically, if you tell me Gothic, that there's some kind of mansion or manor or hall or whatever, I'm into it. Next we have The Animals at Lockwood Manor by Jane Healy. This one is set in 1939, and it's about a woman who is tasked with taking all of the animals from the Natural History Museum, which I presume means that they're dead animals, but it gets kind of confusing because she takes them all to this Lockwood Manor during the war, and then one of the animals goes missing. I presume someone steals it because they're dead, right? But then it's also about that she feels like she's being stalked through the halls of this manor. Like I said, if you've got a creepy manor house, I'm into it. Next is The Companion by Kim Taylor Blakemore. This one is set in 1855 in New Hampshire and is about a woman who is set to be hanged for a double murder. And I believe we go back and we find out how she got involved in all of this and like what happened with the murder. Did she do it? Did she not? Creepy and gothic, into it. Next we have The Golden Key by Marion Womack. This is one set in London in 1901, and it's about the main gist of it is that it's about a medium who is hired to solve a like 20-year-old murder. Murder mystery, gothic. Yes, please. The next one was The Orphan of Cemetery Hill by Hester Fox. Again, I'm pretty sure I've got other books by Hester Fox marked as to read. This one is set in Boston in 1844, and it's about a girl who can communicate with the recently dead. And her sister managed to escape from their aunt, like, because the aunt wants to basically use her and her power, like, for the aunt's own gain. So they escape her, they manage to flee from the aunt, but then it's set, like, however many years later, like 10 years later, and the sisters have now been separated, and the girl who can communicate with the recently dead now works for her father, like pseudo father in a cemetery, and there's a spate of grave robberies happening or something. I don't know, like I said, again, you're just ticking all my boxes. The next one is The Whispering House by Elizabeth Brooks. This one is about a woman whose sister has recently died from suicide, and she's then visiting a hall or a manor of some kind when she's there, she discovers a portrait of her sister. But her sister is obviously now dead, and her sister had never been in this house. So, intrigued. And the final one from that list was The Unforgetting by Rose Black. This one is set in 1851 and is about a girl who is sold by her father to a professor of ghosts. I didn't even need to read any more of the synopsis. You know I was clicking that to read button. And then the final book that I marked as to read this past week was when I was looking at that list of the Gothic releases, one of the recommended lists on the side was a list of YA horror coming out in 2020. And this is a book that I already kind of vaguely had on my radar, and that is Horrid by Katrina Leno. The cover of this book is just incredible. And this one is about a girl who I think's father has recently died, and her mother end up returning to a manor house where her mother grew up, and she's kind of trying to move on with her life and all of that, and she's managing to do that from what I understand, but then discovers a locked room in the house that when she manages to open it, turns out to be a little girl's bedroom, and the little girl's bedroom is not as empty as what it seems. That sounds incredible, and the cover, I want to read this so bad. So that's it. Those are the 16 books that I marked as to read over the past month. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've read any of these ones, or if you're pumped for any of these ones. I should say some of these won't have had a cover picture, I think, because I think some of these are coming out in later 2020. So if there wasn't a picture, that's why. But yeah, I would love to chat with you guys if you're interested in any of these, or you've read any of them, or if you've got any more recommendations for me. Love a good recommendation. I will of course have linked down below the books, and I will also have all of the BookTube channels if I've mentioned them where I heard about these books. So that's it. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye guys.